Welcome back to the Mid-Year Mitch YouTube channel. In today's episode, we're getting the Centerfield 65 almost ready to run. We need to get the dash frame installed, get that restored, convert it to be a factory AC unit, get gauges in it, wiring, and then work under the hood to get the cooling system wrapped up. So we got a lot of work to do, so be sure to stick around. So I have Centerfield back on the ground, and I went and put the core support in for the final time, finished up on these core support brackets, and just riveted in a couple nut plates. And with the hood closed, you can see this thing is turning out really nice, especially from what it looked like before. So now that the bodywork in the roughing stage is basically 99% done, I'm gonna work on the dash now. So this car was a factory blue on blue with air conditioned convertible. But I don't have the original dash, that was long gone. But what I did have was in overkill, I put in a factory 67 air dash. So what I did is I took a tape template of that dash and lined it up with the radio and heater holes, clock hole. So that way I could get my holes for the AC controls as well as the top vent. So I need to punch a couple holes in this dash. I'll slowly work my way up to that size so I don't, go too far. And then I need to remove all the paint off of this because this dash was black from a yellow car. So I need to strip all that off because it's going to go blue on blue. So I stripped the paint off the dash and I started priming it. There are a couple little repairs I need to make. There's a crack in here and a couple little cracks over here, but I just wanted to prime it just to make sure everything's gonna lay down nice, figure out if there's any radiuses I need to touch up on or find any other little cracks. There's a little damage here I need to fix. This dash in the car is missing this little bonding strip that would go on the inside of this dash in here, and it glues to the floor right behind that little tab on the floor. It was missing it, so I don't think anybody really makes them, so I was just gonna make one up real quick. So I was gonna cut a piece of steel out, bend it up like this. I'll make another one just like this. I'll lay fiberglass in it, and I'll sandwich these two together, making a mold. And then I also made this mold out of two pieces, leftover stuff from the new Camaro floor. So I made it out of two pieces, so I'll hand lay fiberglass in the bottom one here. And then I'll put this top one in and squish it together and then pop it out, and we'll have a nice, basically a press molded piece of fiberglass. It's been a little while since you've seen center field, but I've been working on it in the background. I pushed the car outside yesterday and blew all the dust off of it because I am done with rough body work on this car. There may be a couple spots I need to touch up, but I wanted to clean it up because it's time to start assembly work. And the first piece I installed was this dash. So I took this dash, removed the old dash pads off of it, cleaned it up, and I converted it into a factory AC dash. If you guys watched the Overkill project, you saw I had a factory 67 AC dash in that. So I made a template with tape from that car, and then I used some of the little bezels and the vent to figure out exactly how big those holes needed to be. But I used my template to get the rough placement, the rough size, and I slowly whittled it away. And then I used some factory colored paint to paint the dash, and I installed the dash, and that thing turned out awesome. And if we look over the dash and over the hood, that's kind of what this car will look like when it's done. You know, if you just put your blinders on for that, and that it looks in here and everywhere else, it looks like a finished car. But she's gonna need a lot of work. But I came in here, I spliced this section in, blended all this in, and then under the hood, I glued in the inner fenders. I also pulled the plastic off and started to clean up the engine compartment. So now you can see it's just a bare engine compartment, and I have most of the parts laid out here that we need. This car has a Borgeson steering box, so we had a steering column modified to work with that. I have to figure out what's going on with the rag joint. It's not quite fitting the way it should, but this is a stock steering column that was modified to work. And these are some parts that we need, like the alternator, some brackets, expansion tank, some odds and ends. We have a whole new wiring harness here, brand new radiator, a different fan, so that way we'll have a little bit more cooling. I believe it's a 7-blade. We have a brand new steering wheel, so I need to figure out what, I'm sure there's parts in here that we're missing, but I gotta figure out what parts we're missing in here. Gonna be some other odds and ends I'm gonna need, so I gotta lay all the parts out, figure out what we need, get them ordered, so that way we can hopefully fire this thing up next week. I forgot to record this part, but I ended up scuffing and painting the leading edge of both sides of the dash frame black. They did that originally so that way whenever the dash pad's in and the gauge cluster's in, you don't see a little stripe of blue in that little gap. So it just helps blend it together. So I fogged that black, and then I also installed the rubber seal on the fan shroud. I had this powder coated so that way it looks nice and we don't have to take that back out later. And he also has a really nice radiator here. So he wants to keep this thing cool. This is an upgraded DeWitt's radiator. I don't remember if this is the HP series or not, but this is a really good radiator because this car is going to Florida. So he also wanted to upgrade the fan. So I believe this is actually a Camaro fan, but you can see it's symmetrical the whole way around, where a stock Corvette fan is not symmetrical. So we have more blades here. We have a little more aggressive looking blades. So this should hopefully help pull more air through the radiator and just keep this thing cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this stuff installed. So I put a used gauge cluster in this thing. We're just gonna make this thing lot drive basically. So I put in one I had in inventory, and whenever he gets his car painted and starts to do the interior, he can put his restored cluster in. So we got that installed. We have the front of the engine finished up here. It's just a little dirty right now, but we have radiator in, fan shroud, all the hoses, alternator, got the brakes hooked up. Still have to hook the clutch linkage up, and I have to get steering and stuff in it, so that'll be next week. We'll jump into that. I got to put the rest of the door hardware in from the other door, and a couple other little things. Button up the wiring, put the exhaust valance on, torque the wheels, put some gas in it, put a battery in it, and some other fluids, and we'll be good to fire this thing up and drive it out of here for the first time. So that'll be hopefully next week if the few parts I need show up on time, which you never know. But right now I'm going to end it off here because I have to go get my Challenger from the body shop because the whole passenger side got wiped out by a deer. So I want to go pick that thing back up. So that's going to do it for center field today. But that's going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. We just need a couple more parts to get this car running, which hopefully we'll get next week. We'll get this car running and driving, and then this thing will be on its way to Florida. So I got a lot of work to do, and I'll catch you guys later.